never paid much attention to my sister's boyfriends. They came and went like the seasons, some lasting a while, others gone before the next holiday. Emma had this habit of falling fast and falling hard, always convinced that this time she'd found the one. After watching her heart break again and again, I stopped trying to remember their names, so when she called, her voice bubbling with excitement, saying she had someone really special to introduce to the family, I barely reacted. Just another guy, I told myself. Another name I wouldn't need to remember. Still, when she insisted I come over for dinner, I couldn't say no. Family was family, and Emma had a way of guilt-tripping me into doing things, whether I wanted to or not. That's how I ended up standing in her cozy apartment, holding a beer, waiting to meet the newest man in her life. The door opened, and there he was, Jasper. The first thing I noticed was his presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, effortlessly confident. His dark hair was a little messy, his jawline sharp, softened only by a calm, knowing smile. He moved like someone completely at ease, grounded, self-assured, maybe even a little too charming. "This is Jasper," Emma said, practically glowing as she held onto his arm like he was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Jasper stepped forward, offering his hand. "Hey, man. Emma's told me a lot about you." I shook his hand, firm grip. "Hope it's good stuff," he said with a smirk. To my surprise, I laughed. Something about him was disarming, like he already knew how to handle this awkward introduction. I had expected forced politeness, or worse, someone completely detached. But Jasper wasn't like that. He was relaxed, easygoing, like he belonged there, like he'd always belonged there. Dinner went about how I imagined, Emma doing most of the talking, telling stories about how they met, how wonderful he was, how lucky she felt. I half listened, stealing glances at him. He was attentive, present, genuine. No pretense. He listened when Emma spoke, his eyes warm, that soft smile never fading. He seemed real. And I hated that I couldn't stop noticing it. I liked him. And it wasn't supposed to be like that. I was supposed to sit there, quietly judging him, throwing in a sarcastic remark or two, counting down the days until he became just another X in Emma's long list of almosts. But instead, I found myself wanting to talk to him, to actually know him. "So, Leo," Jasper said, turning to me as he took a sip of his drink. "Emma says you're into old movies." I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I like a bit of everything, but yeah, classics are kind of my thing." He nodded with genuine interest. "Nice. I'm more of a sci-fi guy, but I've been trying to get into the older stuff. Got any recommendations?" I hesitated for a second. This was new. Usually my sister's boyfriends only cared about impressing her, not me. But Jasper was different. And that's when things began to shift. That night, something about the way we connected quietly changed everything. It started with a simple question, just a casual request for movie suggestions. But the way Jasper asked made it feel different. He actually wanted to know what I thought. Before I knew it, we were talking, really talking. About movies, music, even work. He was sharp, funny, and had this easy, natural rhythm that made conversation flow without effort. More than that, he listened. Not the kind of listening where someone just waits for their turn to talk. He paid attention. He cared about what I said. Across the table, Emma smiled, proud and happy. "I knew you two would get along," she said. I forced a half smile back, but inside I wasn't so sure how I felt. Because the more I talked to Jasper, the more I realized something I didn't expect. I liked him. Not just as a person, not just as my sister's boyfriend, but in a way that unsettled me. The way his eyes met mine when I spoke. The warmth in his laughter. The way he leaned in just slightly closer when he listened. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was nothing, just a fleeting thought, a trick of the moment. But deep down, I knew better. Jasper wasn't like the others, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Dinner went on, and Emma started talking about a weekend trip to a cabin upstate. I nodded at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. caught between confusion and curiosity. I was trying to understand this strange pull I felt toward him, the way my chest tightened whenever he laughed, the way my pulse quickened when his attention turned to me. Then, as if he could sense it, Jasper met my gaze across the table. Just for a second, but it was long enough for my breath to catch, long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. I looked away first, pretending to focus on my plate, heart pounding in my chest. This is nothing, I told myself. You're just overthinking. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't felt a connection like that in a long time, and I had no idea what it meant or what to do about it. After dinner, Emma insisted we stay for drinks. The three of us sank into the couch, soft music filling the room, laughter echoing between us. At some point, Emma curled up beside Jasper, her head resting on his shoulder, and I felt it. A sharp, sudden pang in my chest. What's wrong with me? I forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, I knew I was in trouble. The more time I spent around Jasper, the more I realized this wasn't just some passing thought. It was real, complicated, maybe even dangerous. Emma was thrilled that Jasper and I got along, and I played along too, letting her believe everything was normal. But something had shifted. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. My life was about to change, and I wasn't ready for it. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a simple friendship forming because Emma wanted us to get along. That's all it was. Nothing unusual, but the thing about little things is they add up. Before I realized it, Jasper had quietly become part of my everyday life. It wasn't just the random texts or casual banter, it was how effortless it all felt. I'd never been the type to keep up with people outside my usual circle, but with Jasper, there didn't have to be a reason. Sometimes he'd send a dumb meme in the middle of the day. Other times a quick, "You'd like this," followed by a song or movie recommendation, and before I knew it, I was doing the same, finding excuses to text him, catching myself waiting for his replies. Emma loved it. She thought it was great that her boyfriend and her little brother were getting along so well. If anything, she encouraged it. Go out for drinks together, she'd say. Bond. You guys are like family now. And the more she pushed, the more chances we had to spend time alone. The first time it happened, it wasn't even planned. I was at a coffee shop working when Jasper spotted me by chance. Grinning like we'd arranged it all along, he slid into the seat across from me. "Look at you being all productive," he teased, nudging my laptop. "Didn't peg you for the coffee shop type," I shot back. "Didn't peg you for the just show up uninvited type," he countered, leaning back like it was nothing. "I'll take that as an invitation to stay," he said. And he did. What was supposed to be a quick coffee run turned into 2 hours of conversation, swapping stories, joking about work, laughing at ridiculous what-if scenarios until my cheeks hurt. I told myself it was fine, harmless. But the more time I spent with Jasper, the more I started noticing things I shouldn't. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the way he leaned in when he really listened, the way a simple, "That's a good idea, Leo," made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with pride. Then one night, it finally hit me how deep I was in. I had just gotten home when my phone buzzed. It was Jasper. "Jasper, you busy?" I hesitated before replying. "Not really. What's up?" "Jasper, just had a long day. Could use a drink. Want to come out for a bit?" I stared at his message, knowing I probably should say no. But the thought of seeing him, even for a little while, was too tempting to resist. Me. "Yeah, sure, where?" We met at a bar near his place, one of those dimly lit corners of the city where the music stayed low and the drinks felt stronger than they should. He looked different that night. Tired. His usual easygoing smile was gone, replaced by something quieter, heavier. "Tough day?" I asked, sliding into the seat beside him. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You could say that. Work was hell and—" "Emma." He stopped mid-sentence, shaking his head. "Never mind. I don't want to talk about it. It caught me off guard." Jasper wasn't the kind of person to complain, especially not about her. If they had issues, he never showed it. But the way he finished his drink in one motion told me more than his words ever could. I wanted to ask. I should have asked. But instead I let it go. Changed the subject and pretended I hadn't noticed the weight in his voice. We ended up talking for hours that night. And for the first time I saw him differently, not as my sister's boyfriend, not as someone I had to politely tolerate, just as Jasper. And the more he spoke, the harder it became to ignore the quiet pull between us. The connection that neither of us had asked for, but somehow kept growing. By the time we left the bar, the streets were nearly empty. The city lights painted long shadows across the pavement as we walked side by side, unhurried, both pretending we didn't want the night to end. At one point, Jasper nudged my shoulder playfully. "You know," he said, grinning, "you're a lot cooler than I expected. Cooler than you thought I'd be, huh?" I replied, smirking. "That's supposed to be a compliment," he laughed. "Then I'll take it however I want." I laughed it off, but inside I could feel it. The shift. The air between us felt different. Quiet. Charged. As we reached the corner, a car sped by too close, hitting a puddle. Before I could react, Jasper grabbed my arm, pulling me back just in time. For a second, everything stilled. The sound, the movement, the city itself. His hand stayed on my arm, steady, grounding, and in that stillness I realized how far things had come and how impossible it would be to go back. I could feel his warmth, the subtle rise and fall of his breath. My chest tightened, my thoughts spinning faster than I could control. He was looking at me, really looking, and for a split second there was something in his eyes I couldn't read. Something that made me uneasy. And yet, I couldn't look away. I swallowed hard and stepped back, breaking whatever strange moment had formed between us. Thanks," I muttered, shoving my hands into my pockets. Jasper blinked, as if pulling himself back too. "Yeah, no problem," he said quietly. Neither of us spoke after that. We didn't have to. Something had shifted, subtle, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. After a beat, Jasper cleared his throat. "Anyway, we should do this again sometime," I nodded. "Yeah, definitely." But as I walked home that night, my thoughts wouldn't settle. We'd come dangerously close to a line that shouldn't even exist. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just imagining things. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't simple anymore. I kept insisting that Jasper and I were just friends, that I was overthinking, that whatever was happening would fade with time. But it didn't. It had been building for weeks, slowly, quietly in every long conversation, every laugh that lasted a little too long, every moment of familiarity that started to feel too natural. I began to realize what the real problem was. It wasn't him. It was me. I had blurred the line between admiration and attachment. I had let someone into a space I usually kept guarded, and one night, that truth became impossible to ignore. Emma had been called into work for a last-minute meeting. She told Jasper to drop by anyway, that I'd keep him company until she got back. I should have said no. I should have made an excuse, told him I was busy, anything to avoid the weight of what I was already feeling, but I didn't. So Jasper showed up at my apartment, holding a six-pack and wearing that same easy smile that could make any situation feel lighter. "Figured we might as well make a night out of it," he said, stepping inside like it was nothing new. I kept it casual. We ordered food, let an old movie play quietly in the background, and let the conversation drift from one topic to another. It felt simple, normal, and yet, underneath it all, a question lingered. How long could I keep pretending this was just friendship? It was fine, normal, until it wasn't. At some point, I realized I wasn't even watching the movie anymore. I was too aware of him, how he sat just a little too close, how his fingers drummed absent-mindedly against his thigh, the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something familiar. I shifted in my seat, trying to focus, but my body wasn't cooperating. My pulse raced. My hands fidgeted. It was as if my body already knew something my mind refused to face. Then Jasper sighed, a long, quiet exhale that seemed to carry more weight than it should. "I don't know what I'm doing," he muttered, almost to himself. I frowned, glancing at him. "What do you mean?" He didn't look at me right away. He just stared at the screen like he wasn't really seeing it. Then, after a long pause, he said quietly, "Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending, like I'm playing the part of who everyone expects me to be, even with Emma. It's like I'm performing instead of living." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Even you guys seem fine," he added, trying to make light of it. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady even as my chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. If Jasper was admitting things weren't perfect, if he was saying it out loud, it meant something inside him was already breaking. And maybe it had been for a while. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. When I looked at him again, he was already watching me. This time, he didn't look away. Neither did I. I should have said something, cracked a joke, changed the subject, anything to pull us back from whatever edge we were standing on. But I didn't. The silence between us stretched, thick with things neither of us were ready to admit. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the movie. Jasper finally leaned forward, not closer, just enough to rest his elbows on his knees, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to find his balance again. "I don't even know why I'm saying this," he said quietly. "Forget it," I shook my head. "No, I get it." And somehow that felt like the most honest thing I'd said all night. We sat there for a long time after that, not saying much, not watching the movie, both pretending to be fine. But deep down I knew something had changed. A line had been crossed, not with actions, but with truth. And once you cross that kind of line, you can't go back. It started with a moment, brief, fragile, and quiet, a connection that wasn't supposed to happen but did anyway. For a heartbeat, it felt like everything else disappeared. The room, the movie, the rules, all of it faded into the background. It wasn't about touch. It was about something far deeper. The weight of everything we hadn't said. The feelings we had both tried to bury finally slipping through the cracks. And then, just as quickly, reality hit. Jasper froze, pulling back like the world had suddenly crashed down on him. His breath was uneven, his hands shaking slightly as he whispered, "I can't." He looked terrified of what he'd done, of what it meant, of what couldn't be taken back. Before I could say anything, he grabbed his coat and left. The sound of the door closing echoed through the apartment, and I just sat there, staring at the empty space where he'd been. The next few days felt unreal. Emma kept talking about how great Jasper was, how she thought he might be the one. I nodded at all the right moments, forcing a smile. Pretending her words didn't cut through me like glass, I told myself to stay away, to forget, to let it go. But late one night there was a knock on my door. I didn't need to check. I already knew who it was. Jasper stood there, his expression unreadable, hands buried deep in his pockets. The air between us was thick, charged, like a storm waiting to break. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. He exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "I know." But he didn't leave. The silence stretched, heavy with everything unspoken. Finally, I stepped aside and let him in. He paced the room, restless, running a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted, like something had been eating him alive. "I can't do this anymore," he said finally. "Do what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Pretend," he said, meeting my eyes. And in that moment, I saw everything written across his face. Guilt, confusion, longing, regret. "I've tried to ignore it," he continued softly. "Tried to act like it's nothing. But it's there every time I see you. Every time I hear your voice, I didn't know what to say. The air felt too heavy, too full of things that couldn't be undone. My chest tightened as I whispered, 'Jasper.' He shook his head, almost pleading. "I just needed you to know." And with that, the silence returned. Fragile, unsteady, but honest. For the first time, there were no lies left between us, only truth and the weight of what it might cost. Jasper closed the distance between us before I could even think. There was no hesitation this time, just raw honesty, a collision of everything we'd been holding back for far too long. It wasn't about touch. It was about release, about every unspoken word, every glance that had lingered too long, every feeling we'd tried and failed to bury. He reached for me, and suddenly all the walls we'd built came crashing down. The frustration, the confusion, the longing, it all spilled out in one impossible, breathtaking moment. "Jasper," I whispered, my voice barely steady. He shook his head, eyes burning with something I couldn't name. "I've tried to stay away," he said softly, "but I can't." And then we stopped pretending. The distance we'd been keeping for weeks dissolved into something neither of us could define, something electric, powerful, and terrifying. Time felt strange after that. Every second stretched thin, heavy with meaning. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this room, this silence, this truth. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, trembling. "No one can know about this." I nodded, though a part of me already understood. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever. Before dawn, he left quietly. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me in the kind of silence that feels permanent. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, one truth became impossible to ignore. Nothing about my life would ever be the same again. We told ourselves we'd stop, that it was a mistake, something we could undo. But we didn't. Each time we found ourselves alone, the same gravity pulled us back together. We'd swear it was the last time. And then it wasn't. Between us, words became dangerous. Even simple things, a look, a laugh, a quiet moment, carried the weight of everything we couldn't say out loud. And every time I told him to leave, he stayed. We became something unspoken, a secret built out of glances that lasted too long and goodbyes that came too soon. When Emma was busy, Jasper would sometimes show up late, and we'd talk for hours, the kind of talks that felt too honest, too raw to exist in daylight. Each moment with him made it harder to pretend we were just friends. There was a closeness between us that felt impossible to name, something neither of us could explain, but both of us understood too well. And then, suddenly, it all started to fall apart. The morning after our last night together, the air between us was heavy. Jasper was quiet, distant. He moved around the room like a man trapped inside his own thoughts. "You're thinking about telling her, aren't you?" I asked softly. He stopped, his back turned to me, and exhaled a shaky breath. "I have to," he said. "And what happens when you do?" His silence told me everything. Finally, he turned to face me, his eyes filled with something that looked a lot like regret. "I can't keep lying to her," he whispered. My heart sank. "Then what happens to us?" His jaw tightened. "There is no us." The words cut deeper than I expected. Before I could say anything, before I could ask him to stay, he was already walking out the door. All day I waited. Checked my phone. Over and over. But nothing came. Until Emma called. Her voice was trembling. Quiet but sharp enough to pierce right through me. "Tell me it's not true," she said. My heart stopped. "Emma?" "Tell me you didn't betray me," she whispered. I couldn't speak. The silence said everything she needed to hear. A small, broken sound came through the line, half gasp, half sob. "Oh my God." Then the call ended. The world tilted. My chest felt hollow. Before I even realized what I was doing, I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door. All I knew was that I had to find her, to face what I had done, no matter how much it hurt.